Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge & Company. A great advocate for social justice is Steven Zeidman, a professor of law at CUNY Law School and director of its Criminal Defense Clinic. He currently represents Judith Clark, an inmate at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, and he's my guest today. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
You know, I just want to take a minute.
Sure.
CUNY Law School, it's a public interest school.
Yes.
It's the greatest public interest school in the country, has most graduate, tell me about it.
It's without a doubt. You know, it is a school, that was the mission. It was back in the early 80s when a bunch of folks said, we have an idea for a law school.
Yeah.
We want it to be state funded. You can imagine that the folks who are going to fund it said,
Right.
Why do we need another law school?
Right.
They said, well, we have a specific mission. We want to train lawyers not to go into law firms, not to go into corporate America, but they're going to fill a huge need. Represent people in housing court, in facing deportation, government benefits, criminal justice. And so that's our mission, that's what we have to do.
Right.
Yeah, and the students really are the driving force behind it because it's a self-selected group who apply to come to CUNY Law School.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It is. It's a very high percentage that actually does practice, practically everybody.
Practically everybody.
What makes a defense lawyer versus a prosecutor? When you get out of law school, what is it inside a brain that makes you go one way or the other?
Well, I think for most people, they come to law school, those grooves are already worn about what they want to do.
I see.
And the defense-oriented people, you know, there are different camps. Some people feel like I'm enforcing the Constitution and making sure everybody has a fair shake.
Yes.
But at a school like CUNY, the students who want to do defense work, I think, have a more macro view. They see the criminal justice system as racist, as oppressive, and for them the idea of trying to put somebody in jail or prison runs counter to everything they believe in.
It's interesting.
So yeah, it really comes from the heart. It's a moral feeling, I believe.
Yeah. It's so interesting how people are born with an instinct that they want to go in which direction.
I think that's right.
Fascinates me.
You'll hear people say, I could do either, I'm just interested in a fair trial. To me, that's rather odd. You know, I think if you want to be a criminal defense lawyer, it has to come from within. It has to be something that you really feel.
Right. And you're not born wanting to be a criminal.
That's for sure.
So you've got a lot of people who are incarcerated, sometimes for too long, for one mistake maybe. Every time I used to go to Bedford Hills, I would always think, there for the grace of God
Sure.
goes I.
Yeah.
So that's a place that is really the prime example of what happens in criminal, right, justice.
Yeah, every year, and I've been doing this for about 20 years. Prior to teaching at CUNY, I taught at NYU Law School, and every opportunity I get, I ask my students, why are we the world's largest jailers? Why do we incarcerate at such a higher rate? And what I'm fascinated by is students give a lot of the stock answers. It's the war on drugs, it's get tough on crime, it's about race, and all of that is true. But the one thing I think they fail to recognize at first is that we are a very punitive country. We punish at rates that are unparalleled by any other modern democracy, any other industrialized nation. And the jails and the prisons are that. Yeah, that's where everybody ends up.
So you're representing Judith Clark, who I think my viewers know was sentenced to 75 years to life and has been in prison 34 years, 35?
Actually, she's going on 36. This fall, she'll be entering her 36th year.
So the only way she can get out is if the governor grants clemency.
Correct.
What is clemency?
Clemency, in a word, and I've been thinking about this for the last 15 months, in a word, it's mercy. It really is mercy. It's the governor looking at somebody, looking at who they are today, how they've evolved, how they've changed, and including what they did, that's part of the calculus, and deciding in really an act of mercy, ultimate compassion, saying, I'm going to commute your sentence. Although in Judy's case, you got 75 to life, I think after 36 years, it's appropriate that you be allowed to re-enter society, to be out from behind the prison bars.
So the people who are eligible are people who are not eligible for parole?
Well, you know, actually, it
like
blends.
Too much.
It blends, yeah. The idea is that with parole, that's your way to get out. So you get a sentence of 25 to life. At the end of 25 years, you see a parole board, and they're supposed to evaluate you fairly and neutrally and objectively, and you have a chance to get out. In a case like Judy's, 75 to life, in stark terms, Judy's been sentenced to death in prison. She'll see the parole board in 2056 when she's 107 years old. So the only vehicle for someone like her is clemency. And that's really the distinction between the two. Having said that, if somebody got 25 to life and has now been in 40 years, is that someone that the governor as well should consider for clemency? Taking that away from the parole, of course.
That's interesting. So somebody's been denied parole every 2 years. Parole is a whole nother subject that we should include, but we'll do it later, or maybe in another program.
Sure.
So we always talk about how many people are in prison, and we're very pleased that the president has pardoned. Well, what's the difference between pardon and clemency?
Yeah, clemency, look at it this way. Clemency is really saying, I'm going to commute your sentence and release you, either today or in a shorter period of time than you otherwise would have faced. A pardon is basically saying, I'm absolving you of your conviction. So, for example, you have cases across the country. Here in New York, we had some. You have somebody who was convicted 20 years ago and is out, but can't get a certain kind of license because of their conviction. So the governor could pardon that person, essentially expunge the
wipe
conviction.
out.
Yeah, so that they could get.
But you can't pardon someone who's incarcerated?
Oh, well, you could if you wanted to. Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So is it harder to pardon?
I think so.
It's interesting.
And I think it's because, well,
you want to acknowledge the crime.
that's the issue. It's the idea of saying clemency, the conviction stands. It's really about commuting your sentence is what we're focused on.
So people who have been wrongly convicted, do they also get a pardon?
Well, they actually should get their case dismissed. So if they were wrongfully convicted and it's been determined that they weren't the guilty party, then their case should be just dismissed and sealed. They don't need any help from the governor, the president, or anybody else.
So New York State, there was a story in the paper recently that New York State is one of the most backward states in trying to bring some justice to criminal justice.
Yeah. You can look all over, whether it's New York City, by the way, or New York State, and say, where is the progressive criminal justice reform? We all know about mass incarceration now, right? Everybody talks about mass incarceration, and the question is, what are people doing about it? And I will say this, I'm optimistic regarding New York State for one particular reason. The governor last fall started a program, and it really is unprecedented. It's a clemency program. It's saying to people, if you're incarcerated in New York State and you believe you meet the basic criteria for clemency, essentially check a box, send it back to our office, and we will get you a pro bono lawyer to assist you with your clemency application. And while that has been fantastic, unprecedented, long overdue, the real question is what's going to happen now, because those applications are in. There are people who've already applied. There are lawyers who've submitted applications, and now it's time to actually start granting clemencies.
How many people do you think are still in prison as a result of the Rockefeller drug laws?
Probably not that many.
Not very few, right?
Yeah, I think very few.
And actually, even beyond the Rockefeller laws, people in prison for drugs isn't nearly as much as people on the outside think.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. I mean, a couple of reasons. One, I think it was probably overstated to some degree, but in New York, for example, the Rockefeller drug laws, the reforms, the resentencing, probably between 10 and 12% of the people in New York State prisons are there for drug-related offenses.
So I've started to talk about the President Obama issuing clemencies, but they've only been for drug
Correct.
charges, right? So he hasn't yet gone to the other side of violent crimes.
Yeah, and that's the good and the bad. I mean, look, 514 or whatever the number is, however many clemencies he's granted, terrific. The problem is by repeating this trope of the low-level, nonviolent drug offender as the only people worthy of clemency, we reinforce the mass incarceration problem. Because, as been shown in study after study, if we released everybody who was incarcerated, I mean everybody across the country, who was incarcerated for a drug-related offense, we would still have a problem with mass incarceration. We would still be the world's largest jailer. So at some point, if we really want to address mass incarceration, we have to do two things. We have to say, we're going to take parole and clemency very seriously. And the second thing is we're going to widen the lens, and we're going to look at people who are convicted even of violent crimes.
Talk about some of the people who are applying or should apply for clemency.
Yeah,
Who are they?
Well, there's somebody like Judy Clark.
Judy Clark.
All right, she's been in, and in many ways, she is emblematic of all the, and there are others, there are many others like Judy, who have been serving excessively long sentences. They have aged out of any chance of any recidivism. They have done remarkable things while incarcerated. They have the support of the faith community, of elected officials, of even within the community where the crime occurred.
Right.
You ask yourself, why are these folks still incarcerated?
It's her sentence is so interesting because it was really capricious on the part of the judge. I may be using the wrong word, but it was an excessive sentence because of her behavior in the courtroom.
I think that's true. I think under any...
How would that happen?
At the time, because of the nature of the crime, 3 people were killed, 2 police officers. Brink's armored guard was killed. The way Judy and others acted during the trial.
Unrepentant.
Unrepentant, very combative, refusing to acknowledge the authority of the court. And so the judge at that time, really, if you think about it, and you compare Judy's case with other people who've been convicted of similar crimes, the sentence is over the top. And the only way to imagine what was going on in the judge's head was he was punishing her for the way she acted at the trial as well.
So how do you appeal that kind of an action, a judge?
Well,
You go to the appellate?
you go to the appellate courts. And Judy's case is, another example of cases that it winded its way through the appellate courts. There was a moment of victory where her conviction at one point was reversed based on ineffective assistance of counsel. But an appellate court reinstated the conviction. So the appellate courts, for most folks, are really not an avenue that's going to get them out of prison.
So Judy is how old? 60?
She'll be 67 this fall.
And she is not the only person incarcerated who is over 60 years old.
No, she's not. In fact, in New York State, if I have my numbers correct, I think there are over 2,000 people, men and women who are over 60 years old.
Serving long term?
Serving long term, another 7,000 who are over 50. And again, every study, I don't think anyone disputes this, shows that even in your mid to late 30s,
Right.
you begin to age out of crime. So these folks, by any measure, present no threat to public safety. So the only reason they remain incarcerated is purely retributive. It's punishment. It's relentless, interminable punishment.
That comes back to the parole board.
To the parole board and to, in Judy's case...
Well, Judy's case. But Judy's case is really an exception
Well,
with the sentence?
You know what it is? There are a lot of folks doing sentences like Judy's. I mean, to me, I've always had this issue about life without parole or
Right.
75 to life. I think that's a
Right.
sanitized version of a death in prison sentence.
definitely.
And that's what we should call it. So there
Right.
are other people doing sentences like 50 to life who are going to die in prison. And for those folks, the parole board is really, it's illusory because you'll be, 100 before you would ever see the parole board. So there are others in that situation. There are people doing life who don't even get to see the parole board, and that's where clemency becomes so critical.
So we've got, how many did you say? About? Over 60?
Over 2,000
2,000.
in New York State alone. I think across the country, if I believe over 50, there are 250,000 people who are incarcerated.
This country is also not only the largest number of people in prison, but with the longest sentences,
Yeah.
right? In Germany, Sweden. Well, what was that case in Sweden where the man shot all those?
Those kids.
Yeah.
That was in Norway.
Right,
And in
Norway.
Norway, they have a 20-year max. And when people always hear that, they say, wait, even for that case, 20 years. Yeah, 20-year max, but if there are exceptional circumstances that the government or the prosecution could show that the person presents a real present danger to public safety, the time can be extended. But it is a 20-year maximum.
Do other criminal justice systems have more services within the prison
They do.
than we do?
They do.
I think we're really, we just dump people, don't we?
I think
And we
that's right.
forget them.
Yeah.
And then they come up for parole, and the parole board would say, tell me about your crime. So you go back 20 years, and you have to go through the whole thing that you've tried to make up for.
Exactly. Or they'll say, what programs have you done? And there aren't a lot to do. Whether it's college programs, whether it's any kind of job training. We know when Governor Cuomo, early on in his tenure, this is Andrew Cuomo, early on in his tenure, he tried to reinstitute some sort of college program.
Right.
And
And the politicians.
yeah,
So it's a very political thing, isn't it?
it is.
Politicians are afraid. They lack courage in many areas.
Yeah, look, if you think about it, as a social justice lawyer, if you had to come up, what is the group that has the least amount of political support? You'll find more support for homeless people, right? For people
HIV
facing
AIDS.
HIV/AIDS, people facing deportation and families being ripped apart. But for people who are convicted of crimes,
Just lock them up, right?
lock them up, throw away the key, and forget about them. And when a governor says, you know what, I want to reinstitute college, then the politicians say, why are we spending money on those
Right.
people as opposed to
Right.
in other ways?
Look at the governor of Virginia. He's trying to let people who've served their terms vote,
Yeah,
and the pressure he's gotten. So now he's done it with an executive order.
yeah, it's still trying to push back, and you see it becomes like a national issue.
Does
Something
that
as
become a
basic as
pardon? What is that? No, it's not.
It's actually, without knowing the particulars about Virginia, but generally, usually it's a state law. It's just
Right. So, but
imagine-
how is he going
I
to?
assume-
Today he's letting 200 or more people. Or
I don't know if
something?
it's an executive order that he has the authority to do. I don't know. But it's a wonderful thing.
Right.
It's saying, you know what, there's this notion of civil death. You're convicted, you can't vote, you can't serve in a jury, and we know you can't get all kinds of licenses.
Right.
You can never really repair your life. And this is just one way to recognize that people have served their time. And Ronnie, I want to mention that. You know, when you talk about clemency and parole, people get this idea that, oh, we're going to let a criminal out. And they think, where's the punishment? Well, people have been punished severely. So someone like Judy Clark, she's asking for clemency. She's been incarcerated for 35 years. People who've done 25 to life and keep getting denied parole, they've done 27, 29, 40 years. So it's not as if there hasn't been punishment. The whole point is that the punishment has been incredibly excessive.
What's the case with Hawkins? Is that his name? He served 40. He was 16 years old when he committed the crime. He's now been in prison, what, for 40 years? He's been not denied parole for how many times? And at
10,
the end of
20
the whole
years?
thing, if he ever does get out, he's going to be deported because he's a British citizen.
Exactly right.
So it shows there's no rational, what would you call it? There's no reason in this whole system.
There isn't. And if you think about it, if we could actually have a sort of an important conversation about punishment and say, what is the purpose of it? What is the objective to keeping somebody in for that long? I can tell you this as well. When I mentioned the governor's new clemency initiative. So in my law school clinic, we've accepted about 5 cases. And when you realize, and certainly, I knew this, but to read these histories, you recognize that, there are a lot of people like Judy Clark. So there's one young man, and without going into the details, because a lot of it is confidential, but he committed a homicide when he was 16. That was 19 years ago. He also has a final order of deportation. And you wonder, how long are we going to keep him and pay for him?
$60,000 a year?
$60,000 a year, And that's the other part of it. I think for most of us, we're drawn to this work because of the human impact of mass incarceration, the devastation of individuals, families, communities. But there's also the cost. And the cost is very real. You're right. It costs about $60,000 a year for one person to be kept in New York State prison.
It's, New York State's supposed to be such a progressive state. Why have we not had the lead? So people will point to the fact, well, we no longer execute people. But that wasn't even done by the political realm, was it?
Right,
That was
came
through
from the courts. Exactly. There's, I think, in New York State, people who are interested in criminal justice, maybe one step removed, they'll say things like, well, the Rockefeller drug law reform, and we've removed so many people. And the truth of the matter is, there was a high of about 77,000 people in New York State prison. We're now down to about 53,000, which is, of course, terrific.
But it's still high.
It's still incredibly high, exactly.
Right.
And it's filled with people who don't need to be there.
It's also, then we have 16 and under, 16 years old, you're tried as an adult.
Yeah.
Now, that's a statewide thing that we'd have to pass, right?
Correct.
And that's on the agenda, but will it ever pass?
Doesn't look like it. It gets scuttled all the time. We know the former chief judge of New York's Court of Appeals, Jonathan Lippman, supported it. Governor Cuomo supports it. but it just
Doesn't move.
It doesn't move, exactly.
And then we have the check the box. But that's a city thing. Was that a city thing, or is that statewide that they changed
The
that?
one I'm familiar with is at the city level.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, that's something that can be done if people are so inclined to do it.
And check the box means when you apply for a job and they ask you if you had any convictions, you have to say yes.
Right, if you were asked that
Right.
question, correct.
Yeah. But now in New York City, you can't ask that question.
Exactly.
Right. So there are all this list, all these things. All right. So what do we do?
Well, I think we start, I take us back to, here's my biggest concern, and this is why I'm involved with clemency. Most of the reforms, if I read one more time that in the newspapers that there's a right and left, everyone agrees we need criminal justice reform.
Right.
I think I'm just going to bang my head on the
Right.
table. First of all, because nothing's happening. But when you look at the reforms, the common theme is all prospective. Let me just explain what I mean by that. It tends to revolve around sentencing. So either eliminate or reduce mandatory minimums, which is, of course, terrific. The problem is it doesn't address the 2.2 million people presently incarcerated. That's where we have to focus. If we really are serious about mass incarceration, we can't give up on the 2.2 million people who are locked up. It's so many of those people should not be there. And we see the president at the federal level, and the federal level is a drop in the bucket because that's
right.
about 11% of the incarcerated
yeah.
people are in federal facilities. But he's doing something. And you look across the states, and that's where we need leadership. There are 50 governors. They all have the capacity to do this. President Obama just granted clemency to 214 people earlier this month. Imagine if every governor granted clemency in one day to 10 people, 20 people. And just suddenly it would become normalized. And we would see there's no threat to public safety.
There have been governors who have done that and have not suffered for doing
Correct.
it. It all goes back to that one political campaign with that advertisement against a caucus.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
It does. It does.
What was it? Tell
the
me
Willie
the name.
Horton.
The Willie Horton.
And just people are fearful, even though what we're if you started with the elderly prisoners, there's nothing to worry about. There's no threat to public safety.
So we come back to courage
We come back to courage.
and to the general attitude of vengeance and vindictiveness.
Yeah. Which is what, if you think about it, clemency is about mercy, and our criminal justice system is predicated on retribution and punishment.
And correction, you also have pointed out the term of correctional service or something
Yeah.
means the purpose of prison was to correct something.
Exactly.
So if it gets corrected, why are you still there?
There's the great irony, right? I mean, it's a troubling word, corrections, and correcting people, but living with what it means, we send you to prison for you to change, to be transformed, to be redeemed. But then if you are, no one seems to care. It doesn't matter. Judy's case, she's the prime example. And what I think really in many ways separates Judy is it's not only the steps she's taken on her own behalf, which are remarkable, whether it's college degrees and the writing that she's done and her own personal growth, but she has done so much for others, which is rare. Because when people are incarcerated, you have so much to deal with on your own life, your own family. But to be able to think about what can I do for the other people that are here? How do I help in the nursery? How do I help bring college programs back into the prison? Back when Judy was first incarcerated, AIDS peer counseling, which was new and now replicated across the country.
They developed a protocol that's used all over,
Yeah, she did.
right? And people come to her, other inmates or prisoners come to her for advice. She mentors them.
They do.
And she's also a chaplain, isn't she?
She is. She is. And when you meet Judy, too, and I know you've experienced this,
yeah.
as someone, I had just started as a public defender in the fall of 1981 when the Brinks robbery happened.
Oh.
And I remember reading about it and being surprised that that was even still going on, that there was this element of, whether it was the Weather Underground or somebody else still active. But I followed the trial. I knew about Judy Clark. But then there was an email last year from Sarah Bennett, who I know you know, who was Judy's former lawyer, who did
Right.
extraordinary things, pushing Judy closer and
Right.
closer to clemency. And Sarah just sent out an email asking for some support, for help in Judy's case. And the first thing that struck, I did the math. I said, wait a minute, 19.
She's still there?
She's still incarcerated. And before it's remarkable. Before deciding whether to take on the case and to commit resources and time, I went to meet Judy. And this is what I was saying before, as you know. You come across someone who is reflective, open, generous, more interested in talking about you. Having said that, willing to talk about what happened in 1981, remorseful, genuinely holds herself responsible, accountable, all the things that you would want to see in corrections, and yet she stays in prison.
Actually, she should be given clemency and be the model that should travel around the country to show the results of incarceration.
I think so. I think so.
She should be the poster child. Is that what they say? The poster woman. I mean, she is the example of what you want to have happen.
It is, and in fact, you know, I spoke to one of the former New York State commissioners of corrections, who said to me early on when I was seeking his support for Judy's application for clemency, and I had sent him something that I had written, and he said, you know, this is true, she did all this, but I think you're missing a point. The point is that she didn't do this alone. This was someone who was a radical, defiant, and really combative, and look what she's done with prison officials, with prison administration. It's someone who's kind of figured out how people can navigate and find common ground together. He said, and I think that's the remarkable piece of Judy that you should be telling.
If people want to know more about your clinic, they can go to the CUNY Law School website?
They certainly can.
And they could go to judithclark.org.
.org. Correct, to learn more about
Or
Judy.
they could go to CUNY.tv and look and click on me and look at the interviews that I did with Judy, so you meet her almost personally.
Which is a terrific thing.
Right.
Yeah, the opportunity to hear from her own.
So we're at the end of this program. Are you optimistic about changing the system?
Mildly optimistic. There is a moment in time. I think I think people really do want to address mass incarceration, and I think slowly people are beginning to understand that that means we have to zero in on clemency and parole. So mildly optimistic, Ronnie.
We haven't even talked again, which I've done on other programs, about the the necessity for citizens to vote and to pay attention to whom they elect in state government. Because if that happened, we would have much more sensible and reasonable laws, right?
A few more courageous politicians, yes. Indeed.
Thank you, Steve Zeidman.
Thanks,
and lots of luck.
Much appreciated.
Okay. If there are any people you'd like to hear or topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016. Or you can go to the website at CUNY.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you.